At the end of the video of part 1 we seen that Ethen studies as Paul interrupts, eager for a hunting partnership. The teacher scolds Paul, and during a break, snacks are offered. While contemplating friends, Ethen's bite on a cookie results in a sudden, alarming incident. As Ethen took a bite of the cookie his teacher gave him, blood started dripping from his mouth, alarming Thane, Rosemary, and the teacher. Ethen's hands were stained with blood as he realized. "My body's reacting to that cookie!" Paul, witnessing the scene, screamed. "Someone help us! Help His Highness, please!" He fled the room in panic. The teacher, in a moment of urgency, retrieved something from his coat pocket, exclaiming, "Damn it!" He threw something at Ethen. Thane swiftly defended with his sword as the teacher attempted another attack. Paul, still in distress, warned, "Get away from the door!" Cecilia suddenly appeared, surprising Ethen, and attacked the teacher, slamming him to the floor. Amidst the chaos, Paul rushed towards Ethen with Victoria, crying, "Are you all right, Your Highness?" He noticed the red streaks on Ethen and expressed concern. Victoria reassured, "There's no need to worry. That's his reaction to the Rostology." Ethen, bewildered, questioned, "Rostology? What's this about?" Cecilia explained, "Someone was poisoning you with it. In order to locate who that was, we had you drink teas that would react to it." Pointing towards the teacher, she added, "And it looks like we've found our culprit." Ethen, clenching his tie, thought, "So you've been protecting me, even from afar." Cecilia called him, suggesting, "Your Highness, you must return to Hastred." Meanwhile, she pondered, "If I leave for Hastred, then what about you?" Ethen, contemplating, questioned, "What do you plan to do after you send me back?" He said, "Cecilia, don't do this on my account." Cecilia approached him, stating, "I'm not going to do anything." Ethen insisted, "You don't have to do things like this for me. I'm not worth it." Thinking, "Please don't get blood on your hands for my sake," Ethen cried, "Don't send me away, Cecilia! Don't try and save me." Cecilia hugged him tightly, confessing, "Whenever I'm with you, I feel so weak, so powerless. I'm sorry," adding, "that this is the best I can manage. I'm sorry, Ethen." The horse carriage rattled fast. Rosemary took care of Ethen, who blinked his eyes upon regaining consciousness. She asked, "Your Highness, are you okay?" As Ethen became aware, he questioned, "What's going on? Where are we going?" Thane, sitting in front, replied, "To Hastred, Your Highness." Ethen ordered, "Turn the horses around. We're going back." Thane remained silent, not accepting the order. Ethen, realizing, grabbed Thane's sword. Thane screamed, "Your Highness!" Ethen shouted again, "Turn the coach around, to wherever Cecilia is. Now!" On the other hand, Cecilia, dragging a person, aimed to attack him with her sword. He pleaded, "Cecilia, you know I was only trying to defend myself." Trembling, he begged for mercy. Cecilia calmly replied, "Of course, Your Grace. I'm sure you were quite nervous for yourself, as the younger brother to the king. The queen is known to be infertile, but you're not even that much younger than His Majesty. And now the lost prince has been found." As he sobbed, Cecilia pointed her sword towards his neck, saying, "Yes, yes! I was driven to this." "You Cecilia interrupted, stating, "Yes. Like you said, you were only defending yourself?" She added, "But you know, I can only tell you the same, Your Grace." "Cecilia." Meanwhile, Ethen arrived, surprising Cecilia. She questioned, "What are you doing here?" Ethen intervened, pleading, "Cecilia, stop this at once." He held her face with his hands, saying, "Don't do anything irreparable on my account." Ethen, tearful, reminded her, "Remember? You and I," he added, "still have a wedding to carry out." Filled with emotions of happiness and passion, he declared, "Still have a wedding to carry out." His hands slipped from Cecilia's face, and Ethen lost consciousness. Cecilia caught him, preventing him from falling. Ethen, in his thoughts, expressed, "Cecilia, now I understand." He conveyed to her, "Why your smiles always had that faraway look," adding, "You've lived your entire life closed off. That was the only way you could keep distant from your own desires." As Ethen felt unwell, everyone was busy taking care of him. It was a busy week, and thanks to Victoria waiting outside, there was no lasting damage to Ethen. However, it took 3 full days of healing for him to come to. In a castle, royal members gathered for a meeting with the prince. The door banged, and someone entered, screaming, "As for the Duke, how dare she try and kill me? A person of royal lineage!" His face covered with bandages, he furiously declared, "There should be no need for a trial. What she deserves is extreme punishment." As everyone sitting there started murmuring, a royal person mentioned, "From what I hear, Prince Ethen was somehow involved in this." Another added, "Yes, and this is Cecilia Sirian we're talking about. Were we to execute her without a proper trial, how would the Order of Hastred react?" Another royal person emphasized, "We need to give full consideration to both sides and follow proper procedure with a case like this." A person in a green royal dress and glasses chimed in, "Yes, we need to consider her position as a duke as well. Don't you agree, certainly? I believe you all have the right of it." The person with bandages thought, This is not how I intended this." The prince gave his opinion, saying, "Let us have a trial." In the courtroom, Cecilia stood in front of the king. Murmurs and whispers filled the room as the incident was discussed. The king banged his hammer, giving his decision. As testified by the witnesses, this man attempted to harm Prince Ethen. Meanwhile, royal authorities dragged the teacher out of the court, screaming, "You have to listen to me, Your Majesty," the king declared, "and thusly shall be exiled from the land of Grosland, never to return. As for Cecilia Sirian, who stands here under the accusation of holding Grosland at sword point, she shall, after taking into account that her actions were done in defense of her fiancé, Prince Ethen Grosland, be sent away to fight the monster king, Liege." Cecilia bowed in front of him and said, "As you command, Your Majesty." In Ethen's room, a beautiful bookshelf adorned the space beside the bed, displaying books in an organized manner. Ethen lay on the bed, and Cecilia sat beside him, holding his hand, saying, "As winter comes to an end and spring draws near, I prepare to leave you yet again." Ethen politely called her Cecilia, and expressed, "That day, it was as if I had nearly gone blind." He added, "I was afraid I was going to die without having a chance to see your face one last time." Cecilia chuckled and said, "You really know how to exaggerate." Ethen laughed, thinking, "I made her laugh." Cecilia looked at him with love, reminiscing about how Victoria used her magic to treat him. She thought, "But it was, Your Highness. Had Victoria not been there, you might not have survived. But I can hardly tell you that." Placing her hand on his head, she thought, "When you're alive and well, smiling at me like this, I don't want to hurt you when you risked your life for me." Cecilia began to speak about Ethen's actions that had angered the king. She mentioned when Ethen tried to use magic against the teacher. "You're not yet accustomed to using your magic. You nearly hurt yourself in the process." She continued, "He's ordered you to enter into the Royal Academy." Ethen, shocked, asked, "The Royal Academy? I don't want to go." Cecilia replied, "It's the king's order," adding, "You know the school has invited you several times before this." Ethen expressed his concern. "But I'll be required to stay in a dormitory if I go." Meanwhile, he thought, "I don't want us to drift further apart, but Cecilia does have to leave on that mission." He added, "There's no telling how long it will take this time, and her opponent is Liege, the king of all monsters." Ethen rose from the bed, stating, "All right. On 2 conditions, though. 1, that I'm able to enroll in the College of Magic. That doesn't mean I'll completely overlook the etiquette's course. I do understand how important it is." Cecilia held his hand, and he continued, "And 2, that when I graduate at 20, We proceed with the wedding immediately. In response, Cecilia thought, I'm always preparing to leave you, yet you. Ethen squeezed her hand, affirming, You're always preparing for our next encounter. Cecilia replied, I'll return safely. He insisted, You must, Cecilia. Cecilia departed on her horse, bidding farewell with Thane, Rosemary, and Paul. Ethan's eyes were filled with tears. Later, he sat at the study table, writing his homework. Meanwhile, Cecilia informed Leon about her mission, showing him a map. In spring, Ethen always remembered Cecilia, who remained busy in her mission. Holding a piece of paper, a purple-headed boy in a liege uniform entered the room and said to Cecilia, My liege. My liege? Are you all right? Cecilia reassured him. I'm fine. I just haven't been getting enough sleep. He asked. It's been tough, hasn't it? To think it's already been 7 years. Cecilia, smoking, replied. 7 years. She gave him a side eye and asked, What did you come to report? Wearing her liege costume, Cecilia, amidst flapping curtains, contemplated. 7 years have passed since I received the order to banish Lickline. After what seemed like a lifetime of battles, we've finally closed in on its lair. In the barren land, living in camps, her liege members fought nervously. As they faced banished Lickline, a large monster with blood-red eyes, fear gripped them. A liege member screamed, Who is it that dares disturb my lair? The purple-headed boy yelled, It's Lickline! Another boy urged, Spread out! Leon commanded, Keep focused! Attack! The monster growled, warning, Foolish humans! I will make you rue the day you decided to set foot on my land. Blazing in fire, Cecilia confronted him, shouting, Everyone get back! The monster dragon blasted fire continuously, its dark red eyes furious. As saliva splattered on Cecilia, she screamed, Search the dragon's lair! Don't leave a single monster alive! Leon rushed towards her, asking, My liege! Are you all right? Is its blood poisonous? Meanwhile, the purple-headed boy approached Cecilia with concern, asking, My liege! What if something had gone wrong? Do you know how many of us would have dropped down in tears? Cecilia reassured him. It's fine. I'm still in one piece. She inquired, Is there any news on the Silurian harp? One of them responded, Sophia took a few nights to go and locate it. The purple-headed boy questioned, But what does His Majesty even plan to use it for? This mission was supposedly about banishing Lickline, but I can't help being suspicious. Leon pondered and said, It's said that whoever possesses the Silurian harp will gain happiness, but did any of its owners actually meet a decent end? Reminded of Sophia's instructions, Cecilia shared. Under the pretense of attacking Lickline, Rothnal had ordered in secret that I secure the Silurian harp. Legend has it that owners of the Silurian harp will become happy, consoled by its music, but according to records, they all met grisly ends, robbed of everything. Cecilia thought, The harp can't be for himself. She stated, We'll return upon securing the harp. In the castle, wedding preparations were underway. Ethen asked Risen, Risen, how are the wedding preparations coming along? Risen, discussing with Paul, replied, Everything is proceeding smoothly, Your Highness. Thane and Rosemary stood behind Ethen. Paul exclaimed, Dressed to the nines again. Are you really that pleased she's coming back? Ethen replied, Of course I am. It's her, after all. Indulging in his thoughts, Ethen reflected, After 7 long years of waiting, she's finally coming back. Cecilia, I've changed much over the years. For one, I'm taller than you now. It's been 2 years since I've been out in society. Even to this day, my heart starts beating fast whenever I think of you. As I am now, will you finally be able to truly see me? Will you finally see me as a man? Meanwhile, Risen called Ethen, saying, Your Highness, the daughter of Marquise Andrea requests tea. Paul added, Again? She never gives up, does she? Rosemary sighed and added, How many times has it been now? Asking for tea is all the craze among the ladies in Yensun now, Paul remarked. Rosemary described the trend, saying, every afternoon, they get in their coaches, visit family members of their choice, and demand tea. It's protocol for the chosen family members to be grateful to have been chosen and to provide the fanciest tea possible. Servants approached for tea requests, and Ethen interrupted. Rod, how many times have I told you? He added, decline all requests for tea. Or are my orders mere jokes to you? Rod, always with a cheeky response, said, not at all, Your Highness. Must be because of all the talk about a dashing young man's sworn fidelity to a fiancée then much older than Shauna himself. Talk that's causing Duke Cecilia much censure. This time, he apologized to Ethen, who replied, you may go. I have no intention of having tea with anybody. Warning Rod, he added, and the next time you come up here with some nonsense drivel about tea requests again. Rod replied, eek. Yes. Understood, Your Highness. Still standing, Rod said, come with me. Thane, Rosemary, and Paul took pity on Rod. Ethen ordered them, saying, bring me my jacket. I'm going out. Thane expressed concern. Your Highness, you don't intend to visit that place right before the wedding, do you? Ethen insisted. My jacket. Thane replied reluctantly. Yes, sir. Two girls chattered and played draft games, with number games on the board. Sophia, holding her hand fan, was also there. As Ethen entered, Sophia noticed him and said, welcome, Your Highness. We've been waiting. After King Cecilia's mission to banish Lickline, rumors of her return spread as Lickline's head was displayed on the northern gates of Yensun. It was rumored that along with the monster king's head, she presented the mythical Silurian harp to Ravnal. People speculated about the king's motives and wondered who the target of the harp's curse might be. Ethen expressed, it doesn't matter to me whether Ravnal gives the harp to me or another royal person. However, in his thoughts, he emphasized, Cecilia's back after 7 years, and that's all that matters to me. In the castle, he pondered on how to approach Cecilia, thinking, she must have arrived at the Yensun branch by now. I need to go see her, but what excuse can I give? Reflecting on the past 7 years of no communication, he added, I cut off all communication with her, even a single letter. It felt like an eternity. But it was necessary for her to see me not as a child, but as a man. Concerned for her well-being, he wondered, is she doing well? Is she hurt anywhere? Contemplating the myriad questions, he admitted, there are 1,000 things I'd like to ask, but where do I even begin? Considering various approaches, he thought about requesting tea like others or discussing wedding plans. However, he dismissed the idea, realizing, wedding preparations for Hastred and Ursias are already over, and Cecilia would only smile and nod. Frustrated and overwhelmed, he expressed, if I have to wait until our wedding day to see her, I might die of heartache. Someone called him, saying, Your Highness. It was Rod, hesitant and awkward, asking, do you have a moment? Ethen became furious, screaming, I dare you to tell me one more time there's a request for tea time with me. He roared at Rod, who got scared and stammered. But, Ethen interrupted, yelling, Rod! Trying to explain, Rod said, but it's your fiancé. Bowing and apologizing. My apologies, Your Highness. I shall take my leave. Ethen thought. What nonsense! As Rod left, helpless. Reflecting on Rod's words, Ethen realized. Did he really think I'd say yes to some tea request if he held on? Fiancé? He screamed. Wait. Who did you say it was? Rushing towards Rod, he grabbed him. Rod, scared, cried, Duke Hastred and Baron Hyan. Apologizing, he begged. I'll never do it again. Ethen replied. Good job. And Rod, relieved, said sorry again. Ethen smiled. You did a good job. Excited, Rod asked. Then where shall I show her to? Ethen instructed. To the greenhouse. I'll be there shortly. Thinking about his appearance, Ethen wondered. How do I look right now? Grabbing a table, he thought. I've heard people compliment me on my appearance, but I look far too pale. I don't think Cecilia would find me attractive. Considering Cecilia's preferences, he added. At least when I was young, she saw me as lovable. But what if she doesn't like the way I look now? No, this isn't the time to brood. He grabbed his collar, clenched his wrist, and started leaving, thinking, I need to go meet her. Reflecting on life, he pondered. Why do we always expect more the more we have? If I were 11 again, I'd have given almost anything to have what I have now. Opening the window and running, he thought. So why is it that now, I can no longer be satisfied? Cecilia and Sophia dressed beautifully, Cecilia in a white and pink pastel dress and Sophia in a red royal dress. Cecilia greeted Ethen, saying, It's been a while, Your Highness. Ethen, overwhelmed, thought, I once thought the Cecilia I always saw in my dreams was so beautiful, so perfect, that when I finally reunited with her, she would never truly be that beautiful. Continuing his thoughts, he admitted, that I'd never find her that perfect. That I'd be disappointed in something. But now that I finally see you, you're even more beautiful than you were in my dreams. You take my breath away. Standing in front of Cecilia, he grabbed her hand, kissed it, and said, Welcome back, Cecilia. He expressed his desire to prepone their wedding, to which Cecilia lovingly replied, It's soon enough as it is, Your Highness. Ethen persisted, suggesting a wedding in 10 days, but Cecilia explained, It's summer. Most nobles have retreated to their estates. They won't be able to arrive in Yensun in 10 days. She emphasized the need to keep a low profile, considering the union between Hastred and Ursias. Ethen understood, acknowledging the political aspects of their union. Meanwhile, Sophia, noticing Paul's appearance, exclaimed, Look at you! You've lost so much weight! Irritated, Paul denied it, attributing it to his mother being away. Sophia, concerned, screamed at Ethen, Your Highness, please tell me you've been feeding Paul. Ethen reassured her that Paul had been eating well, but Sophia continued, questioning Ethen's influence on Paul. Ethen wondered about Paul's behavior, noting a change in his usual demeanor. Confused, he thought, shouldn't he be happy to see Sophia? What's wrong? As Cecilia tapped on Ethen's back, she mentioned, I'll see you tonight. Astonished, Ethen blushed and asked, Tonight? For what? Cecilia's statement, I'll see you tonight, left Ethen blushing and astonished. He wondered, for what? Of course, she didn't mean it that way. In the castle, everyone was beautifully dressed in royal attire, including Ethen in a white royal dress. While sitting, he thought, how stupid of me to get excited over nothing. I knew it. But still, I wouldn't have gotten all worked up had I known it was the ball she was referring to. Reflecting on his anticipation, he added, even so, I can't help but look up every time someone walks in to see if it's her. I feel like such a fool. Lost in his thoughts, Ethen was interrupted when someone called him, saying, Your Grace. A girl in a yellow royal dress, Olivia Zandria, stood before him, expressing excitement to see him again and asking about his well-being. Paul joined the conversation, acknowledging the previous meeting at the commencement. However, when Olivia Zandria began expressing her feelings, Ethen, feeling the weight of her persistent advances, considered how to handle the situation. He grabbed the sofa, raising it, and thought, must I turn her down yet again? Olivia rushed towards him, asking, Your Grace, would you be interested in? Ethen interrupted, stating, I need some rest. Don't send for me unless absolutely necessary. Thane and Paul were happy to see Ethen stepping away, while Zandria was sad about his departure, calling after him, Your Grace. Rushing to the terrace, Ethen encountered a person in a stylish black royal dress who criticized him, saying, You could have been a bit nicer. She's pretty enough. She even prays every night. Ethen retorted, Fervent prayers aren't what she needs. She needs to learn to stay away from men who are already betrothed. The person continued with suggestive remarks, taunting Ethen about his focus on being betrothed. Ethen, furious, shouted, "Enough of your filthy talk," and pointed out that people thought he would have been better off as a priest. Cecilia intervened, calling Ethen, and the person introduced himself as Larrywood Z. Zandria, the firstborn son of the Marquis of Siphon. Larrywood, nervous in Cecilia's presence, claimed to be a friend of Ethen and referred to Cecilia as Miss Sirian, infuriating Ethen. Cecilia, unimpressed, commented on Larrywood's lack of etiquette, suggesting they meet under better circumstances. Larrywood, visibly shaken, left the scene. Cecilia extended her hand to Ethen, suggesting they leave together. Ethen, seizing the opportunity, screamed, "Give me a chance to take the lead for once." Cecilia agreed, and they danced in front of the guests, who admired their performance. While dancing, Cecilia remarked on the passage of time and the change in their dynamic. Ethen, intrigued, asked her, "So what was it you wanted to tell me?" Cecilia asked Ethen, "Could you imagine what it's like to live your entire life in the shadow of the one who gave birth to you?" Ethen thought about Paul, knowing that Sophia was born with powerful magic and exceptional swordsmanship, making her a formidable figure. Reflecting on Paul's discomfort when Sophia returned, Ethen suspected an inferiority complex. Contemplating his own desire to surpass Cecilia, he pledged, "I'm willing to do anything to leave your shadow, so that you may be free to do whatever you want, and so that I'll be able to give you everything." Recalling Victoria's secret messages, Ethen appreciated her role and acknowledged her as a powerful figure. Victoria, bowing before him, explained that she called him to ask about his ideas on the throne. She emphasized Ethen's legitimacy as the heir according to tradition and the Grosselin bloodline. Victoria laid down all her honor for him and requested, "Please take your place on the throne." While dancing, Ethen, wanting to share something important with Cecilia, began to speak. Cecilia eagerly asked, "What is that?" However, before Ethen could express himself fully, during Ethen and Cecilia's dance, a crash interrupted the celebration as a monstrous creature with red furious eyes arrived, growling loudly. The dancing couple halted, and a purple-headed boy of the liege rushed to Ethen. Cecilia screamed to him, "Chris! Protect His Highness!" Chris swiftly responded, "Yes, Your Grace." Cecilia, taking charge, ordered Sophia. "Sophie! Guard the king and queen!" Sophia replied, "Yes, my liege." In the chaos, she yelled, "Run! Ag!" Concerned for Cecilia, Ethen tried to stop her, saying, "Wait, Cecilia." However, Chris insisted, "Please, Your Highness, we need to go now." As someone mentioned that the doors wouldn't open, security aimed arrows at them. Cecilia, quick thinking, shouted, "Get down!" She grabbed a table cover to shield them, and Sophia, following orders, screamed, "My liege!" Cecilia instructed her, "Get the archers, Sophie! I'm putting my faith in you." At that moment, the king rushed in, and Cecilia raised, wondering who would use a monster to attack the king. The creature, despite the king and queen being present, seemed to be searching for something. Chris informed Ethen, "Your Highness, I must get you to safety." Realizing the danger, Cecilia understood that the monster wasn't after their majesties, but was specifically targeting Ethen. Despite Chris's warnings, the monster attempted to attack Ethen, causing him to fall to the ground. The monster growled menacingly as Cecilia rushed at it, striking its back with her sword. However, a blue light emanated from the monster, shocking her. Undeterred, she firmly gripped her sword and swiftly decapitated the creature, revealing a purple magic stone. Cecilia, surprised, grabbed the magic stone, jumping away from the defeated monster and landing in Ethen's arms. Ethen, deeply concerned, screamed at her, "Are you insane? What if you had gotten hurt? What if you had died?" Cecilia, lost in her thoughts, realized Ethen's perspective on her strength. She hugged him tightly and asked, "Would you mind letting me down, Your Highness?" Ethen, still worried, called out, "Hastred!" As the king arrived, Cecilia bowed before him, addressing him as Your Majesty. The king, furious, demanded every detail behind the incident, ordering an immediate investigation. He instructed Cecilia to ensure that everyone involved in the incident was brought before him. Cecilia, acknowledging the king's orders, called Chris and directed him to ensure the safe return of all guests. Chris affirmed, Yes, my liege, and Cecilia added, Be mindful of the servants. Our knights accompany the guests home, and there may not be enough room left in the carriages. Cecilia, ensuring the safety of the servants, instructed Chris, Make sure the servants don't get left behind. Have them all gather and stand by in a hall while they wait. Chris promptly replied, Right away, my liege. Turning her attention to Leon, Cecilia showed him the purple magic stone, saying, This is. Leon identified it as a magic stone and deduced, Somebody used that to summon the monster. Gripping the stone, he expressed his outrage. So there's a traitor in the palace. How dare they? Cecilia agreed, saying, Exactly. Find Victoria and show her the stone. She's sure to find something. Leon affirmed, At once, my liege. Cecilia, contemplating the situation, wondered about the captain of the guard when Ethen called out. Cecilia. Concerned, she asked. Are you all right, Your Highness? Ethen, gripping her hand tightly, insisted. Let's go home. Cecilia, assuring him, replied, I'm perfectly fine too. Ethen, with determination, screamed, Come back with me. Cecilia remained silent, prompting him to implore more politely. Please. While holding her hand, Cecilia pondered. Why do you try so hard to protect me? Ethen, asserting his role as the Duke and Master of the Order, stated, As Duke and as Master of the Order, I should always be the protector. Even the knights who put their lives on the line for me are under my protection. And yet, you're always watching over me as if I'm the one in need of protection. Recognizing his concern, she reassured him, saying, Your Highness, I'm all right, emphasizing her training to handle such situations. Ethen released her hand, conceding, All right. I'll go back alone this time. Tenderly, he touched her face, asserting, But next time. Planting a kiss on her cheek, he vowed, I won't let this happen again. Later, while contemplating in his study, Ethen reflected, I always thought that after our reunion, he added, after I turned 20 and you came back from the war, we would wed, and I'd finally have my happy ending. However, he mused, somehow, the closer I get to Cecilia, the further she seems to be slipping away from me. Reminiscing about moments when he felt it was just the two of them in the world. Was I mistaken? Am I just another knickknack? Some ornament that Cecilia has to keep safe? Meanwhile, someone entered the room and said, Your Grace, a message for you. A servant brought a tray with a letter placed on it and stated, It's from Raznatif. Ethen took the letter and replied, I see. You can go. Ethen opened the letter, finding a handkerchief inside. The servant left the room, saying, Yes, Your Grace. As Ethen started reading the letter, it began, I hope this letter finds you well, Your Highness. Allow me to get straight to the point. Within, you will find a handkerchief that belonged to the late Queen. Ethen thought, Mother's? It was one of the palace washerwomen who brought it to me. She informed me that one of the ladies in waiting gave her a considerable bribe and ordered her to burn it. Little did she know, the washerwoman had an invalid son. The washerwoman believed that if she committed such a sin, her son would never be healed. Hence she came to the temple to see me. Inspect the handkerchief, and you will find blood upon it. Ethen opened the handkerchief, discovering blood in it. Blood, of Her Majesty's, containing trace amounts of poison in it. He recalled that poison, saying, Poison. I'd been told that Mother died of a broken heart after my presumed death. I blamed myself, thinking that I was the one who caused her death. I couldn't forgive myself. But I held on to life. I refused to let their lives be in vain, even though I often thought it should have been me who died in their stead. Yet, all this time, It was, in fact, death by poisoning that brought me such suffering and pain? Ethen squeezed the handkerchief and slammed his hand on the table, repeatedly punching it. Rosemary and Paul rushed in. She screamed, "Your Highness! What's the matter?" Holding his head, Ethen screamed, "Leave, all of you!" Rosemary came in front of him to stop him. "Your Highness," Rosemary said, "your hand! We need to call the physician!" Ethen screamed out loudly, "I said leave!" He clenched his teeth and thought, "I don't care if Cecilia sees me as some ornament. I need to see her now." After that, he stepped out of the room. Paul screamed out, "Your Highness, where are you going?" "Your Highness!" Ethen turned and said in rage, "Don't come after me." Rosemary, Paul, and Thane stood still. In the castle room, Cecilia sat on the sofa wearing a simple white dress with a red coat on her shoulders, holding a book in her lap. She listened to some voices. "You mustn't rush in like this. Please calm down." At that moment, Ethen rushed in, opening the door. Cecilia stepped towards him and said, "Your Highness?" He hugged her tightly. Cecilia got worried and asked, "What happened?" Ethen was crying badly. She asked again, "Your Highness, what's the matter?" He replied, "I miss you, Cecilia. I had to come." Cecilia wiped his tears and said, "Sit down." Ethen sat on the sofa. Cecilia asked him, "How are you feeling, Your Highness?" She patted his head with a cloth and said, "You're drenched. I'll have them bring you a change of clothes." He replied, "I'm fine." She rubbed a cloth on his face. Meanwhile, Ethen said, "Just stay here. Cecilia!" He pulled her hand towards him, revealing tattoos on her arm. Cecilia got astonished. "What is this?" When Ethen held Cecilia's hand, a tattoo appeared on her hand, the constraint seal tattoos. A religious practice many priests subscribe to in an effort to become closer to God. The tattoos suppress magic to force an expansion of power. To become marked with them is to experience excruciating pain. While this is usually done to expand one's magical power, the ones etched across Cecilia's body were mostly designed to keep her power under control. On seeing her tattoos, Ethen started thinking, "These aren't tattoos that can ever be done to yourself. Which means this is something that was done to her." He added, "She's always sacrificing herself for others, risking her life in battle to save and protect her country. And yet, this is how they repay her?" Cecilia called him. "Your Highness," Ethen asked. "Cecilia, who did this to you?" She replied, "Your Highness, it doesn't matter. What's done is done. I'm fine." He grabbed her shoulders and asked her, "Are you fine?" A cloth dropped over his head. He screamed out again, "You never tell me the truth!" He squeezed her shoulders and said, "You're always putting others before yourself." She replied, "That's not really." Ethen said, "Cecilia! You!" He started crying and said, "You torture yourself." Leaning on her, he continued, "I heard the worst possible news today." He added, "And the bad news, it doesn't end when it reaches your ears." Putting his head on Cecilia's shoulder, he cried and said, "I have to keep thinking about it. I have to ultimately learn how to face it. But I couldn't bear it, and I ended up thinking about you. You're all I have." He screamed, "You're everything to me, and I needed you. And yet you." Then he started thinking, "You must be in so much more pain than me, but you've never learned how to take pity on yourself." People say, but Cecilia Sirian does not need pity. She only commands respect, praise, and honor. But I. He hugged her tightly. "I pity you more than anyone in the entire world." Cecilia started thinking about her tattoos. As master of the Order of Hastred, as a holy swordsman, and as heir to the Sirian family, I'd taken these tattoos for granted. The path I walked was one of glory that anybody would dream of taking, and I never resented the hardship I faced. Yet here is Ethen Grosselin, in anguish because of me. He's the one in pain, even though these tattoos on my body no longer hurt me, and he resents things done to me that I never considered as abuse. She added, not even my father, nor those who look up to me, would grieve so much for my pain. They would never think to put my suffering before theirs. Yet when no one else dared to entangle themselves with me, you alone came to me, and you alone opened the door to my heart. Cecilia wiped his tears and said, don't cry. I'm fine. He replied, fine. Why do you keep saying that? How could you be? Cecilia leaned her nose on his face, chuckled, and said, I have you now. That makes me one very lucky person. Ethen became happy. Thank you, she said. My little fiancé, who could hardly defend himself. Ethen screamed out loudly. What must I do in order to protect myself? He hugged her again and said, I'm not worth saving. Cecilia thought. Has now grown taller than me. He's someone who risked half his fortune, no, half his potential, half his future for my sake. Ethen said, I'll give it all to you. She's thinking, and is shedding tears for my sake. Ethen, I'm happy that you've taken that step towards me. And in some twisted way, without even realizing it, I came to enjoy the worry and concern you had for me. Ethen grasped her hand tightly and said, Cecilia. She replied, Yes, Your Highness? Ethen asked, May I become yours tonight? She replied, Yes. They both kissed. Ethen and Cecilia kiss each other. Ethen lovingly lifted Cecilia in his arms and carried Cecilia to the bed. Ethen loved to Cecilia on bed. Ethen was saying, Cecilia, you're strong, gorgeous. There's no one who desires you more than I do. I love you, Cecilia. I want to have a family with you. No, on second thought, all I need is you by my side forever. The next day, Ethen woke up still in bed, and Cecilia was standing in front of him. She asked, Oh, you're awake. Seeing her fully dressed up, Ethen asked, You must have woken up early. Cecilia said, Breakfast will be ready soon. You should get dressed and come downstairs to eat. He replied, All right. She said, Then I'll see you. Ethen stopped her, saying, Wait, Cecilia. He kissed her and said, See you downstairs then. Cecilia got shocked and replied, My hand, Your Highness, hee. Meanwhile, Leon rushed in, saying, My liege. She said, Leon? You're here early. Is something wrong? He told her. It's about the magic stone you asked me to give Miss Salyazo. He gave her a letter. She sent an urgent message from her tower. She couldn't ascertain who the stone belonged to. He added, But she's certain it's from Hastred. Leon informed Cecilia about the stone, stating that Victoria couldn't ascertain its owner, but she was certain it's from Hastred. Cecilia was shocked. From Hastred? Here's a brief explanation of Hastred. Hastred is an order with a very strong bond, united under the banner of freedom. Each member places such absolute trust in the other that having a traitor among its ranks would be unthinkable. If there ever were a traitor, they would be nearly impossible to locate. A traitor within the order would not only be a direct threat to both Ethen and the king, it would be treason, a violation of contract, and a threat to the very existence of Hastred, a complete act of treachery. And no one within Hastred would be oblivious to this fact. Cecilia thought, I have to find the culprit. She asked Leon, Who else knows of this? He replied, Aside from me, only Miss Salyazo and her master. Cecilia said, All right. We'll give it some time before sending a message back to Victoria. She thought, If there really is a traitor among us, they're likely connected to my uncles. My uncles who are still remonstrating against the king to reclaim the Hastred dukedom, even though I'm a holy swordsman and the rightful heir, simply due to the mere fact that I am a woman. She added, But this won't be enough to take me down. Whether they're my father's brothers or not, I will not hesitate to destroy them. She went to Ethen's room and thought, My only concern is... Ethen saw her and got excited. You're finally here. He added, I'm surprised I made it here before you. To see him, Cecilia started thinking, This man with the radiant smile, my husband, my only family, and my greatest vulnerability. Then, she reminisced about her childhood. Once, when she was a little girl, she wished for a doll. She was at the market with her father when her eyes first fell upon it. It looked like the prettiest thing on earth to her. Seeing what other girls her age were like, she didn't think having a doll was anything strange. She said to her father, "Father, I want this doll." So she asked her father for it without hesitation. Her father replied, "Never ask for such a foolish thing again. Do you understand me?" She thought, "Foolish. That's when I learned there were things I could never have. So I'm not allowed the same things as other girls." After that, she began receiving, under her father's tutelage, what most would deem a masculine education. Education she never thought was unusual for a girl like her. She added, "I was just 13 when I had to wield my sword and represent the top of my class at the military school of the Royal Academy. I remember it had been such a beautiful day." She recalled a day when the sky was remarkably blue, without a single cloud in sight. All the spectators were celebrating as if that day was some blessed holiday. Their eyes shined with curiosity, wondering whether a 13-year-old girl could truly defeat the gladiator in front of her. She was getting ready to fight with a tall man. In the audience, her father was there as well. But the only thing she wished for was for him to stop the game and save her. "Never in my life had I wished so ardently for help," she thought. In hindsight, she reflected, Father probably wanted to show the world that his only child, Cecilia Sirian, possessed the strength to inherit everything from liege Sirian. But it was the opposite. Her father stood up and turned his face. So despite my ardent wishes to father, saving me was not a possibility. The person in front of her started saying, "This little girl is the only thing standing between me and my freedom." He screamed out loudly and attacked her, shouting, "This is for my freedom!" She defended herself, ultimately killing him. His blood splattered on her face, and she thought, "I never wanted to kill anyone. I never wanted to take anyone's life." After that, she said, "I need to become stronger. I can't be weak. To be weak is to forsake father's wishes." She reminisced about her adult life, thinking, how ironic is it that I, the girl who claimed her place by decimating others' freedom, is now the master of an order of knights fighting in the name of freedom. She added, "Little by little, over time, I killed off more of my weaknesses. I grew stronger each day so that I would never need protection nor help from anybody else." There were times when she made up her mind to give up everything. She went to her father and sighed, saying, "You should remarry, father." Her father thought, "Under normal circumstances, I'd have married long ago." She added, "It's bothersome how everyone keeps gossiping about you being without a child." On this, her father thought, "With a young child in tow by now," she said, "it would be good to leave behind an heir." Meanwhile, she thought, "Perhaps it wasn't that I found it bothersome, but that I was all worn out. Maybe all I wanted was some time away from my relatives telling me what to do, away from my thoughts, and away from all my duties." She reminisced, "And that's when I met you, Ethen." Cecilia reminisced about her past, from childhood to adulthood. "And that's when I met you, Ethen. Even then, you had an air of elegance around you, yet you were so small and frail, as if you'd break into 1,000 pieces at any moment." She explained his appearance. "Golden hair as light as a lemon, pale, soft skin, and clear blue eyes with a violet hue. When your eyes met mine." At that time, she shared her feelings about him. "I found myself hoping that you would somehow find the strength to carry on." She added, "I began taking care of you out of respect for my father's wishes, but it wasn't long before I came to have a genuine affection for you. You, with a strong mind and will of your own, who has always acted in consideration of me alone." She continued, "Someone who had, for the first time in my life, told me I could do anything I wanted to do." Meanwhile, Ethen was kissing her arm, on which tattoos appeared. "Now I can no longer push you away. How could I after seeing the way you grieve for my pain?" In bed with Ethen, he expressed, I love you, Cecilia. She started thinking. Is this love? She touched his face softly and thought. Ethen, I've always been hiding in the gray area, watching on as a spectator. She added, and though I'm old enough to know there can be no promise of forever, all I need is you by my side, forever. It makes me feel warm inside. He kissed her face, and she started comparing Ethen with the doll she wanted in her childhood, but her father denied. You're just like that doll, Ethen. Something so sweet it makes me vulnerable. She touched his face with love and thought. When you told me I could do as I wished, I truly did consider relinquishing my power. But I've come too far, and I can no longer hold on to the past. So instead, I will use all of my strength for you, Ethen, she declared. She added, that past is no longer an obstacle. You've taken my hand, and we're together now. So I'll protect you, just as you've protected me. Ethen, wearing a brown prince costume, came by waving his hand, saying, Cecilia, could we? Meanwhile, someone called Cecilia, saying, Your Grace, there is something you must see. Cecilia interrupted Ethen, saying, My apologies, Your Highness. It seems. Ethen tapped on her shoulder and said, It's fine. You must be busy. We can talk later. Stepping forward, she nodded her head and said, Right. We'll talk again later then. Ethen also waved his hand and smiled. Ethen thought, but we never did. Cecilia became so burdened with work that it was practically impossible to see her after that. After that, Ethen went to the lounge of the castle, beautifully furnished in a white theme. He opened the door and screamed out, Cecilia! He went to a maid and asked, She's not here. Is Cecilia back? She replied, Her Grace left early this morning. He screamed out at every corner of the lounge, Cecilia! After being depressed, he sat by the window and started saying, How is she still so busy? It's been 6 weeks already. It's only a fortnight now till our wedding, and Cecilia's still occupied elsewhere. He added, I can hardly say I'm surprised, though. I idle endlessly, whereas Cecilia always has her hands full. He started crying and said, How could I possibly burden her further by demanding her time as her lonely lover? How overbearing would that be? Reminded of what he actually wants, he expressed, All I need is for her to be by my side, but I know even that would be asking for too much. Though the world has done nothing for her, it continues to demand from her. No matter how hard she tries, all she gets in return is suffering. He added, But with how kind Cecilia is, she thinks nothing of it. All I could do was simply wait without protest for her sake. Even though the silent, solitary waiting took a heavy toll on me, there was no other way. While sitting by the window, he pressed his head and said, I must, in order to grant Cecilia freedom. Crying, he continued, That's the only. Reminded of how Cecilia took care of him when he got sick, he recalled her saying, Your Highness, you're awake. I was told you passed out. They said it was due to stress. He thought. Again. Reflecting on his feelings for Cecilia, he expressed, I've already passed out once from pining for you when all I had to do was wait 2 months for you. He added, I'd wanted to present a healthy, manly front for Cecilia, but now, when all I had to do was wait 2 months for you. Cecilia, sitting beside him on the sofa, told him, They also told me you haven't been eating well for days. The wedding's next week. Do you think you'll be all right by then? Ethen, waking up from the bed, said, Cecilia, I abhor myself for having worried you, and yet, he added, I'm so glad I've finally gotten to see you. Leaning on her, he asked, Cecilia, do you really have to leave again? I know better than anyone how busy you are. Grabbing her arms, he started crying, saying, Still, please, just for now, tell me you have time. On the other hand, a royal person was expressing distress while holding his heart, screaming, Not only did we fail to get rid of the Crown Prince, we lost the magic stone as well. We can't risk another failure. He added, You know full well they'll never find out who's behind it, no matter how hard they investigate the stone. It's only a matter of time before they track us down. When that happens, it's all over." He continued, "Even so, we cannot stop here. That damned witch. I'll drag her to hell if I have to."